Welcome to Connect.Vegas. We feature conversations with Las Vegas creators and leaders, learn about their work, and explore our shared love of our favorite city. And now, welcome our host, Ben Laifsky.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Connect.Vegas. I'm Ben Laifsky. I'm sitting outside on a gorgeous September evening. It's a beautiful time of year in the valley. Temperatures are getting a little cooler. I'm watching the sun get lower in the sky. I'm here to introduce a conversation with my friend Dave Navarro. Many of you, Dave, already. He's the president of Enterprise Bank locally. He and his team are very active in the community, and they do a lot to bring people together, to support local businesses and startups, and also do a lot to support local nonprofits. I really enjoyed this conversation and this opportunity to get to know more about Dave and his background. I hope you enjoy it too. And if you do, please let us know. Thank you. Hi, and welcome back to Connect Vegas. I'm here with Dave Navarro. Dave, could you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Thank you for having me on, Ben. My name is David Navarro. As Ben said, I am the Nevada Regional President for Enterprise Bank and Trust. And so we help out small businesses as well as larger privately held businesses here in town. And we also have the opportunity to work with quite a few real estate investors and developers and help handle all their needs. So it's a fun gig.
Is there a type of business that you typically work with or a type of development? Is there a theme there, or is it more broadly based?
Yeah, interestingly enough, it's pretty diverse. We are not boxed into any one industry or any one asset class when it comes to real estate. So we can venture out and find, several different opportunities, which is nice. But we're not boxed into any particular industry or asset class, which is a good thing to have.
Okay. A lot of us don't really know the difference between one financial institution and another. Can you describe the value that Enterprise provides?
Yeah. And I think this is an important conversation, actually. And I spend quite a bit of time talking about some of the differences in banks. I have a lot of respect for banks of all sizes. But I think it's important for customers to know because it can help make your time spent more useful. So let's start with the different types of banks. And I'm just going to use size as my gauge. So oftentimes you'll have community banks, and these are headquartered usually in the state where you are in business. And these community banks, they often are smaller. So there's some community banks that are a bit of an exception. Overwhelmingly, they're smaller in terms of the assets in their balance sheet. So usually $1 billion or less. And I know $1 billion sounds like a very large number, but for a bank, that is on the smaller side, believe it or not. And so what that means is many of these banks within their own institution have policies. And so for a community bank, usually they're able to help out small businesses, right? That's probably their cornerstone of clientele. But as the lending needs get larger, those clients often have to navigate to a different level of institution. So from community bank, then you have regional banks, anywhere from over $1 billion to probably 50 billion, 100 billion. It can vary pretty widely. But regional banks have a little bit more credit to deploy. So a company that needs to purchase a building, let's say for $10 million, which is not uncommon in commercial real estate, they'll often have to navigate from a community bank to a regional bank. From there, you have what I would call the money center banks, which are the big four out there. And these have $1 trillion+ asset bases for their balance sheet. So a very large institution, but what moves the needle for them is oftentimes deals on Wall Street. Although they do serve consumer, small business, commercial banking, what really is a core revenue sector for them is done on trading desks and underwriting IPO, all sorts of things that most of the businesses we interact it's not applicable to them. For small businesses and commercial clientele, which is I would say those companies that have revenues of above 10 to 20 million, for those types of clients, they usually are navigating the world between community and regional banks. And sometimes they'll find challenges. Either they're too small for a very large institution and feel like they don't get the level of expertise and time they need invested in them to have a successful banking relationship. Or then you'll get the converse where, hey, we've outgrown our bank and we need to find the right partner for where we're at now and or where we're going to be.
All right. Want to pivot a little and learn more about you. You're
That's dangerous, Ben. That's dangerous.
You're born and raised, am I correct?
That's right. Yeah. There's 5 of us.
Tell us about growing up here and maybe what were your hobbies and interests when you were growing up?
I had a great experience growing up here. I love it. I've stayed in Vegas. I've had opportunities to expand my career into other markets, but I've always chosen Vegas. The way I've described it, to me, it's the best city on earth and it keeps getting better. So it's tough to leave it. Growing up, like a typical kid, I love playing sports. I love music. My favorite sport growing up was basketball. And then as a teenager, I got into weightlifting and bodybuilding. And from the music standpoint, was a big hip hop kid. And then oddly enough, got into heavy metal in high school. And that's been my go-to genre ever since. So that's a little bit about Dave. Yeah.
And how do you think about all of the growth the Valley's had? Like all these people that are trying to say that they're natives when they've been here a couple of years.
It's incredible. When I grew up here, I remember when I was in high school going to college. This is right around the time of the recession, and it felt like so much enthusiasm and activity had dropped. And when you were really young, you may not really have an appreciation for the business climate. And so it wasn't until a few years after the recession, I'd say maybe 2012, you started seeing the optimism grow. Because growing up, I remember when Red Rock Casino Resort opened, that was a big deal. There was talks even at that time that one day there's going to be a outdoor mall area around here. And as a kid, growing up in that time, the early 2000s to late 2000s, the mall was everything. One of my first jobs was at a mall. Kids, we loved to walk around the mall mindlessly and try to make friends and whatnot. So it was very appealing to me. But when the recession happened, all that came to a screeching halt. So why do I share that? Fast forward a couple of years after the recession, then those talks resume again. We get this incredible place, downtown Summerlin. Henderson continues to expand and we get sports teams out here and everything is just aligning right for us. And I'm really excited now about the industry, the studio industry coming out here. I think that's another new avenue of excitement. And I told you I was a basketball. I love basketball growing up. And I cannot tell you how much I long for the day when we have an NBA team here in town. So that's what I look forward to. Like you said, I've seen the city grow tremendously, and it's been a pleasure to see.
Yeah, years ago, I went to one of the Vegas Chamber preview events, and this is a long time ago, and they said, we need a concert venue, a real concert hall for culture. We need a medical school. We need a stadium for sports. We need to expand the convention center. And I was like, that's wonderful. You should pick two. They did the whole list and then they just kept adding on. And it's just amazing to see what the town is doing. And now movies are next.
Yeah, I agree.
When you were younger, what were some of the early jobs you had and what in those led you to the banking industry?
So my first job that I've ever had, I was a busser at a incredible restaurant, in my opinion, called Fuddruckers. And I may have not said the name right the first couple times I was interviewing, but I eventually got the hang of it. It was a burger joint and it was my first work experience. I remember the first day I walked home with some money from the pool of tips that we had and just I was so excited to finally be working. I was working while I was in high school. And then from there, I worked two other brief short jobs. One working at Hollister in a mall, like we talked about. And then I told you I liked lifting weights and bodybuilding. And so I actually became a gym membership salesman at 24 Hour Fitness at one point. And then, mind you, that time after Hollister and while I was being a gym membership salesman, I was in college during that time. And I left because I wanted to get into finance or accounting, but mainly accounting at that time. So a role opened up the street from my house to be a teller at a bank. And that's how I got my start into banking. Now, I worked only 2 months as a teller and I did not enjoy that role particularly. Although many people have enjoyed that role, I didn't. So I left there and then I got into accounting. I worked at a CPA firm as an intern. My intention was to pursue a full-time career in accounting. Life had different plans. After that internship ended, I got an internship at a bank. And this time I was working on the commercial side and I really enjoyed what I was doing and I felt I was adding a lot of value. So I decided, even though I was pursuing degrees in accounting, after getting my master's in accounting, I decided to stay in banking because I felt that's where I added the most value and that's where I would have the most success. And I think in hindsight, that was the correct for me.
Yeah, and I think of you as much more outgoing and people oriented than most accountants that I know.
And I think that was one of the elements of banking that appealed to me was the internal communication as well as the external communication with clients, right? I appreciated that piece and I always felt I did well there, but I also appreciated the analytical stuff. So banking was probably a better fit for my temperament as well as my skill set versus just being in accounting and not really being so client centric.
Okay. Let's come back to enterprise. What does working with enterprise, if you can generalize, what does it look like? Is it consultation? Is it, how does that look?
Yeah, the team and I really focus on adding value. So one obvious way in which we do that is through our expertise around banking products and services, certainly. But even beyond that, and I think Ben, you've probably got a sense of this. I think we go out of our way to create opportunities for people to make important connections, right? Business, personal, etc. And then at certain times, we actually get very strategic. For instance, if we have a general contractor as a client, and we also have a developer, and we realize that those two they haven't been connected yet, we will often make those connections, and it could be very good for both of them financially speaking. But the bank doesn't get any cut of that. But what we recognize is if we're able to add value to folks, um, people are going to want to do business with us. So that's always been our premise, find ways to add value. The most natural one is obviously those banking products and services, but tangentially find other ways, making key introductions for customers goes a long way and having events that they enjoy going to. So that's how we've taken our approach to business. One other thing I'll just touch on is don't make it any more difficult for your clients to do business with you than necessary. So if you find that there's pain points in bringing on new clients or maintaining them, look for ways, if possible, to avoid it or to limit that pain. You want it to be as effortless as possible and enjoyable, right? So I think sometimes being in an industry that's very regulated, we take that for granted that, hey, there's going to be some burden on you as a customer to do business, particularly around the commercial space. But being willing to help them out during that and navigate that process is crucial, right? Make it as easy as possible to do business with you. I think that's very important too.
Yeah, that's everything you said. It's how I think of your group, you and your team. You're very present in the community and you do a lot of work to bring people together, events you put on, and also to help educate people.
Yeah.
Is there anything about your work or your bank's work that people just don't understand or they get wrong?
I think sometimes that happens. I think the team and I do a pretty good job of correcting that or sharing more information so that the people who maybe have a misunderstanding of what we're able to do can better understand. But typically, many of the customers we deal with are experienced. So when we have those communications with them around, hey, here's what we're able to do, Here's what we're not. In order for us to do what you're asking, this is what we would need to see. Usually that's pretty readily received and understood. But on occasion, we do come across, hey, why can't you all do this for me? And for us, one thing that I've always prided myself in, and the team does this very well as well, is we really try to be thorough and explain why we're able to do something, and more importantly, why we're not able to do something. So one thing that we find is we'll have to say no to certain things. And many times in banking, that's where it stops, right? Just a no with no further explanation of how to get to a yes. And so I think we just take that little extra step and really explain why we're unable to do something and what would need to change for us to be able to do it. So I think that's important too. And that feedback for clients, even though no one wants to hear no, they find it very useful. Okay, this is information that I can take action on and I'll know for the next go around. And so I think there's an appreciation to that.
That's also a more compassionate
Sure. Yeah.
approach. You're not a no without a reason is cold.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't think of any of you or your team that way. I want to just touch on the things that you all do in the community. Is that something that you thought of, or did it evolve, or was that a plan that you came up with, or?
No, it's just natural. We were all of us are very interested in, I'd say, achieving our full potential. And professionally, that has its space, but also the broader community is involved in that. Are we being thoughtful with our time and helping in causes that we care about? And the bank, to their credit, I mean, they offer volunteer time off, etc., so that the team and I can be able to focus on areas that we care about, right? And that benefit our community. I know we have teammates who serve on the board for YMCA and the largest mental health nonprofit here in town and oldest. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that. Personally, I serve on a couple nonprofit boards, and I feel that I am a better professional. I feel more fulfilled by doing that. So some of that's, I don't want to say selfish, but I enjoy how it feels. And I think the team does as well. And plus, you see the impact you can make. I think sometimes we're too dismissive of what we are able to do, unless it's something gigantic or with bright lights, right? Oh, I can't fund a multi-million dollar endowment. So what does my volunteerism or philanthropy matter? We've taken a different approach to that. And we found that we're able to, just like with clients, we're able to add a lot of value, right? We have skill sets are very useful as these nonprofits are navigating all sorts of things and expertise that we can share with them. We also have our time that we can help as volunteers, and we have funds. We have personal funds, and even the bank pitches in on many causes. And so when you look at that from a cumulative standpoint, you stand back and like, oh my God, we actually accomplished quite a bit, but we had to make that a priority. And the one thing I will say to just wrap this up is sometimes there can be the thought that if I focus more time on giving back, maybe I'm missing out on professional success or better results. And the experience I've had has been quite opposite to that. I feel like many people are willing to do business or meet with us because our reputations it precedes itself. So they say, yeah, hey, I've seen some of the work you do and it was very interesting. We have a banking need and you're very committed to the community. You might be a good person to talk to. Heard that so many times. To me, it's very telling that there's also a strong business case to be made for giving back.
That's wonderful. And I do agree with you that it comes back to you in some way.
Yeah.
Is there anything else about the bank's products and services that you wanted to talk about that we didn't touch on? I know you guys do offer a lot of financial literacy. Is there anything else you wanted to make sure we talked?
Yeah, we do have one program that is very unique. I think what you'll find with banks in the spaces that they compete, like I said, we're not, my institution, we're not necessarily doing deals on Wall Street. We're in the traditional space, lending deposits. What you'll find with banks, if they're competing in the same space, it's almost like a commodity. Most products and requirements are pretty similar across institutions. Excuse me. So what I think is unique is, like you said, having the right people in place makes a big difference, especially when you're competing for commodities and adding value beyond just making products and services. But one thing that we do as an institution that I'm not aware of any other one is we have a program called Enterprise University. And we have this university, there's classes each week, virtual classes, they're live, and it's really good content. And it's not just for our clients, it's for anyone who has an interest in the community. So whether you're a small business owner or you own a large business, or you're just a professional, or you're entering the workforce as a professional, there's classes at various levels, right? Everything from what things you need in your HR handbook to how do I structure an appropriate exit, right? In planning for the end of your ownership of the business. So the classes really run the gambit. Some of them are on leadership. And the bank's been doing this for over 20 years now. And I think it's pretty remarkable. And some of the classes are on demand. You can access them at any time, but they do a fall and a spring semester, and it is top notch. And what we do is our bankers overwhelmingly aren't the ones teaching these classes. We're bringing in professionals in their various disciplines and having them come in and talk about topics that they have the experience to talk about. And we hold it in high integrity. These individuals aren't making sales pitches for their own companies or firms. They're just sharing the information. If connections happen afterwards, that's great too. But the intent is really just getting the information out there. And so I like to share that with everybody because that is something many people do not know that we offer that I think is pretty important.
Yeah, it's very important. Um, all right. I'm going to move to a recommendation question from you.
Okay.
What's a book that you recommend or maybe that you've given most often as a gift?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You bring up a good point. I should give gifts more often, and to make that easy on myself, just buy books. Um, so the book that I think has had a profound impact on how I've navigated the professional world. I'm almost apprehensive to say this, 2 books, but the one for the professional world, I would say 48 Laws of Power. I think it was a very interesting book, and many of the laws that are talked about, I don't necessarily apply by choice. Some of them are quite Machiavellian, but some of them are really timeless and useful. So that is a book that I refer back to that really helps navigate many different worlds, I'd imagine, but certainly the corporate world and moving up, being an entrepreneur. So that's one book. The other book that I would mention is a book called The Alchemist. It's a fiction book, but I think many of the stories or many of the stories within that book are pretty applicable to things we will deal with at some point in our life. One that always comes to mind for me is in that book, there's a part in there where the main character, the protagonist, he's on this adventure to get to Egypt, right? He feels this calling to there to find treasure. Now, along the journey, he gets held up in some place. And when he's there, he's actually able to build a comfortable lifestyle, but he still has this goal, right? And so then he's conflicted. I'm living in comfort here. Do I still pursue my dreams? Do I still pursue my goal? And that's just one of the many lessons. That's one lesson that I find myself dealing with constantly, right? You achieve something and then there's a level of comfort, but deep within that you desire to achieve this or to pursue this. And I think too often we rely on our comfort. And that's my opinion. That's one of the points of that story in that book. So I think those two are the ones I would give as recommendations.
Those are great. They help you understand both people and the journey that we all go through.
That's right.
All right. I've got some Las Vegas questions for you.
Okay.
How do you describe the difference between Las Vegas today and the Las Vegas you grew up in?
There's even more stuff to do now. That's how I would describe it. There was a lot to do growing up, but now it's tenfold. I have 2 young kids. I think they expect this in every city they go to. And they're so disappointed where we go back to New Jersey to visit family or something. And New Jersey has a lot of offerings, so maybe not a fair comparison, but the park we visit, there's just a park there, right? So if we're just going to a park, we're not going to Omega Mart. They don't have an Omega Mart here. They don't have New York, whatever the case may be, right? Just so many unique things about Vegas or the amount of concerts. I feel just more good things are available here, right? Especially around entertainment, which I enjoy. Comedy, music. You couldn't pick a better town.
Yeah. Every town needs a sphere.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Favorite business groups or the organizations that help you connect with people in the Valley?
Man, there's many. So for me at this point, I went to UNLV out here and I'm very involved with the Alumni Association. I'm actually serving as the president this year and next. Uh, and I think that's a group that's been very beneficial to me personally and professionally, and one that I enjoy being a part of. Right now, not everyone is an alumni of UNLV, so I recognize that maybe not everyone can readily join that, but they have many events that include the broader community outside of just alumni. But that's one that I think is useful, and I know that many people in the professional space in Vegas went to UNLV, and they probably aren't really connected with the Alumni Association. Anyone who's in that situation, I would encourage them to look into the Alumni Association, and they can experience the thing I have.
All right. I know you do a lot of work in the charitable community. We have a very giving, there's a lot of groups doing great work in the Valley. Do you want to talk about any of the ones that you
Yeah.
want
Thank
to
you
highlight?
for let me do that. There's three that are near and dear to my heart, and there's so many good ones. The only reason I'm highlighting these three is because I'm involved with them. Right. This is not to discount all the other great work that's getting done out there. One of the boards that I serve on as their treasurer is Make a Wish of Southern Nevada. I really admire their mission uh, to allow for wishes to take place for those kids with critical illnesses. It's very heartwarming. It's touching, and and it's the CEO of Make a Wish Nevada says it all the time. It takes a community to grant a wish, and so I really enjoy the work they do, and I think it's such a dialed in organization. I really enjoy spending my time with them. The other one that I'm on the board for is Special Olympics Nevada, and it was very interesting. So I joined Special Olympics Nevada when it was just an advisory board. Believe it or not, there was no Nevada entity up until very recently, or maybe at one point many years there was, but it had become defunct if it did exist. So we were able to get that started back up, and I was on that founding team. Mind you, I did very little of the work. It was really driven by the executive director and the chairman and so many others. But the little role I got to play, I've always appreciated it. And I love getting to spend time with the athletes, and they do incredible work beyond just putting on athletic events, which is touched now into the wellness of the athletes and all sorts of things, and leadership even. I remember we invited one of the athletes who was in the athlete leader program. He came and spoke at one of our Baker events about Special Olympics. And I really appreciated that program because as someone who was not particularly aware of uh, much around much aware around intellectual disabilities, I appreciated that they are still helping these individuals that may have intellectual disabilities reach their full potential beyond just sports, even. How can you be a leader in your community, develop your speaking skills, all that? So that's another organization that's near and dear to my heart. And I think they do a lot more work now than what first comes to mind when you think of the Special Olympics. The third one I would share, and I've already touched on this a little bit earlier, is UNLV. So the college experience, it changed my life in a very profound way. I was a first generation college student. And so I do spend a lot of my time at the university, teach there part time, and give back in a variety of ways. So those are the three areas and organizations that I really enjoy being involved with. And I'm always looking for more. Like I said, I really enjoy it. And the three that I highlighted does not take away from the great work of so many others that I'm aware of, but I enjoy highlighting these three whenever I get the chance.
Right. You said that very well. Those are wonderful groups. Couple of fun Vegas questions.
Okay.
What is your favorite meal in Las Vegas?
Oh man, I knew you were going to ask me that. This is another embarrassing moment for me. So I have the palate of a teenager. Incredible food is wasted on me. I like eating junk, and this is not a slight to any of these respectable institutions because I personally love them, like Del Taco, Domino's, Little Caesars. I can eat that all day. I have to force myself not to, but those are my go-tos, these national brands. But I will say this, my wife and I recently had an incredible experience, and I'm probably going to butcher the name. At Fontainebleau, there's a French restaurant called La Fontaine. We went there for brunch, and it was one of the best culinary experiences I've ever been a part of or have partaken in. And so I tell everyone about that restaurant. It's great. On a side note, my wife and I have quite the affinity toward the Paris Hotel. So our first date was there at Mon Ami Gabi. And when I proposed to her just a couple months after that first date, I proposed to her at the Eiffel Tower, also Paris. So those are a couple restaurants near and dear to our heart, but check out La Fontaine at Fontainebleau. That was incredible, that brunch.
All right. I love that. You remember what you had for brunch?
I do. Yeah. So this is the teenage palate in me. I had French toast. It was incredible. And my wife had eggs Benedict. And so she let me have a little bit of her plate, which was delicious as well. But yeah, it was great food. And we got a bunch of sides as well. So it wasn't just, oh, they're really good at this one dish. It was every single dish and side dish we had it was immaculate. So
You might have already answered the next question, which is what's a favorite spot to view the city?
to view the city at the Paris, there's Eiffel Tower, which is great to see the Bellagio fountains, but not necessarily get a view of the whole city. One place that we've gone to recently where we really like the view is Circa, particularly. Oh, I'm blanking on the name now.
The
We got
Legacy
the party there last year. The Legacy.
Club.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's a great venue to see the city. And interestingly enough, Palms as well, right? You get to see particularly the strip. So I think those are some hidden gems. See the city without being necessarily on the strip.
All right. Our final question is, if you could share a phrase or a quote or idea with just millions of people, what would that be?
You're putting me on the spot to share something with millions of people. I didn't account for that. I'll tell you an expression that I say probably far too often, but it's quite simple. The sooner the better. I think too often we feel that things are going to happen, right? And generally they do. However, I've had too many occasions where they don't, and I just relied on this will happen in time, and then it doesn't work out. I'll give you a quick example. The team and I were working on a deal one time years back, and we set a closing date. And the closing date was several weeks when we set it. And we actually completed all our due diligence on the bank side early on, right? And I said, hey, let's just close this transaction. Let's get it across the finish line. And then there was some disagreement around, we don't want to rush it. It's fine. It's going to happen by this date. It didn't happen by that date because the inevitable happened, which was the title company. It was a real estate transaction. The title company got hacked. So we couldn't close on the transaction. But if we had done it sooner, because we were able to, it would have been closed. And we wouldn't have had to deal with that. My point being is when we allow things to just happen and don't take advantage of closing the loop on things, we open for ourselves a can of worms, an infinite amount of possibilities for it to go wrong, right? So if you have the opportunity to take care of something, I would say overwhelmingly, do it then and there, knock it out. Um, and I think you'll have more peace of mind if you do that. I remember in school, particularly, I had a very bad problem with procrastination where I would wait very close to the deadline for something to complete it. And even if everything went well, my work was not as good because I rushed it. And I didn't really have a chance to proofread it because I was so close to the deadline. And I didn't appreciate that. I didn't appreciate this at the time. I viewed it as though I was maximizing my time, right? So I'm not spending any more time than necessary on an assignment, but I was really boxing in the how good my assignment could be or how good my work could be because I didn't allow myself for more time to proofread or do additional research to make it better. So the sooner the better. My team hears me say that message all the time. And I've personally applied it in my life. I think that's one of the reasons why I've been able to find a leadership role at a relatively young age is because I didn't leave things to chance or just necessarily arbitrary years experience. I sought out mentors. I got the needed experience to move up, etc. I would encourage that to everyone. That's just my personal philosophy.
No, that's very good advice. And I probably need to put that on a sign on my desk too. David, I really appreciate your time. Appreciate every time I get to talk to you, I come away feeling good. How can people get in touch with you? We'll include this in the notes that we publish.
I think I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So that's probably the best way to get connected. And if you have a question, feel free to message me on there. I check it pretty regularly. And outside of that, you can check out enterprisebank.com. We have a specific section dedicated to Nevada. And if it's around banking, you can get in touch with us and specifically me. That's what I would plug to get connected.
All right. Thank you. And again, I really appreciate your time.
Ben, thank you. This is the first podcast I've ever done. So appreciate you taking me through this journey, my friend. And I look forward to talking to you again at some point soon.
Thank you.